As the draft rapidly approaches, we take a look at the 2024 season. And if you're like me, you're questioning, can the Kansas City Chiefs do it? Can they make NFL history by winning their third consecutive NFL title? And thinking about all of this, it brought me to which teams would be contenders and stop them from actually getting that world championship for the third consecutive year. Now, I know the Chiefs have all-world Patrick Mahomes, and they've made certain moves to make them better. And if you are a Ravens fan like me, you would have thought that last season, while Kansas City was on a down year, this would have been the year that the Ravens or someone else would have taken Patrick Mahomes out of the playoffs. But inevitably, when you have quote unquote one of the top two, if not the top quarterback in the league, anything is possible. Now, in their pursuit of the third straight world championship, the roster has changed slightly, and the Kansas City Chiefs seem to be better on offense. So while we're going to take a look at these teams, this is going to be a pre-draft ranking of the teams that will take away the Kansas City Chiefs' pursuit of a third straight title. So we're going to look at some of the losses and additions to these teams that help make them a contender. Also, we're going to look at what Kansas City has lost and gained to make their roster better. Now, in 2023, the Kansas City Chiefs struggled offensively, lost some games because they couldn't score points. This is something new to many Chiefs fans and to me as well, being that this team became a defensive juggernaut. They were ranked 2 behind the Ravens in a lot of statistical categories, which actually helped propel them to the title. But when it all mattered most, the offense did what they needed to do in the Super Bowl, overcame a 10-point deficit, and won the Super Bowl. The Chiefs now will be missing some key pieces as well as bringing in some key additions. And one of those key additions to me is Marquise Hollywood Brown. To me, this is an ingenious move, signing him for a 1-year, $7 million deal, which gives them that home run threat that they have not had since Tyreek Hill was a Chief. They also brought in tight end Irv Smith, who had unlimited potential coming out of college, but has not lived up to that billing. Now, being in a pass-happy offense, if he can stay healthy, he may provide some relief behind Travis Kelce. But most importantly, the Chiefs re-signed Chris Jones to a record massive deal, ensuring he will end his career possibly in Kansas City. Being their most disruptive and important defensive player, you had to bring him back, no matter what the price was. But in a surprising move, the Chiefs tagged and traded cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. Yes, that L'Jarius Sneed that caused that fumble at the end zone to stop the Ravens from mounting a comeback in the AFC Championship game. Now, they traded him to the Titans for a 3rd-round pick. Andy Reid did not seem to be happy about this, but I do think that without him, they can survive, especially if you can get that pressure up front, and being that the Kansas City Chiefs had a bevy of cornerbacks and safeties that were in their first 3 years. So where they lack or have lost that impact player on defense, they gain one on offense that can bring the Chiefs back to this offensive juggernaut that we've seen through past seasons. Now we're going to get into the contenders that I do believe will challenge the Kansas City Chiefs for the Super Bowl title. And this list is comprised of 2 NFC teams and 3 AFC teams. One of these teams probably will surprise a lot of people as how high they are, but to me, I think that that team is going to be an up-and-comer, and they're going to surprise a lot of people just as they did last season. So let's jump right into it. And coming in at number 5, this is not going to be a popular pick, but this was a team that most thought was going to contend for the Super Bowl the past season. An unfortunate injury 4 snaps in, I'm going with the New York Jets. Yes, Aaron Rodgers missed all of last season with an injury, but New York has the defense, and they've had the defense that is championship caliber. They just never had the offense behind Zach Wilson to attain that goal. Now, along with getting a healthy Aaron Rodgers back, the Jets also attacked one of their weakest position groups on the field, which was their offensive line. Letting go Mekhi Becton, bringing in a John Simpson from the Ravens. They signed Tyron Smith, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, and they traded for Morgan Moses, also of the Ravens. Now, to some, this may not be the offensive line that most people want, but it has to be better than what New York put on the field last season. And having superstars Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson on the offense, this offensive line will undoubtedly help Aaron Rodgers stay protected just a little bit longer. And if you watch Aaron Rodgers' career, you know he does not need much to get going. Just when you thought that they were done, they brought in a Mike Williams. Now, once Mike Williams gets healthy, he is a former 1,000-yard receiver. He is a jump ball specialist. And if the Jets can continue playing the defense that they had, only getting a little bit of offense, because that's all that they really need, they could possibly be one of the teams to knock Kansas City off of their perch. Coming in at number 4, I also think that the Philadelphia Eagles can also be in contention to take down the Chiefs. Now, last year was not the best year for Jalen Hurts. He had a down year. Their offensive identity was skewed a little bit. I think more of that had to do with the offensive coordinator, because if you watch the Philadelphia Eagles, you can see they ran the same offense week in and week out, regardless of the opponent. And I think after week 10, it caught up with them, and they were not the team that started the season. They also brought in free agent DeAndre Swift, who had a pretty decent season, who came on later on, but the passing attack just was not where it needed to be. So what did the Eagles do? They went out and they acquired Saquon Barkley, former number 2 overall pick in the 2018 draft. I believe he is a legitimate upgrade from Swift, even though Swift did not have a bad year. Also on defense, they brought back Gardner Johnson, a safety, who had his best years in Philadelphia, and they traded for Kenny Pickett. Hopefully they will not need him, but he's there if something may happen to Jalen Hurts. Most importantly, one of the losses that I think they had, which was probably the biggest, is center Jason Kelce. He has been a stabilizing force on that offensive line. He held everything together. Now, if they can bring in a suitable replacement, all the other positions on the offensive line are set. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league, and one of the biggest proponents of them going to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now, can their new offensive coordinator bring it all together? Can Jalen Hurts get back to that MVP trajectory that he was on? That is going to be the biggest question. Now, if he does, I see them battling it out for the right to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, being that that is the weaker conference, that there are a handful of teams that are in contention coming out of the NFC. Now, coming in at number 3, we have last year's participant from the NFC side in the Super Bowl, the San Francisco 49ers. Once again, there is not much competition in the NFC, so San Francisco has an easier path to make it to the Super Bowl. This team is star-studded on offense and on defense, and to make matters better, even though they lost Chase Young, who really didn't provide much during the season, he had a sack in the Super Bowl, but to me, one of their biggest additions was bringing in Leonard Floyd from the Buffalo Bills. Leonard Floyd is guaranteed to get you 10 sacks per season, and I think he is an upgrade. They also traded for defensive tackle Malik Collins after releasing Arik Armstead, and also brought in linebacker Devondre Campbell. This team did not need to add much. Now, the only bad side that I see is the loss of Drake Kinlaw, who got injured in the Super Bowl, so he's probably not going to come back until the playoffs, if he comes back at all. But offensively and defensively, this team is stacked. So if Kansas City makes it back to the Super Bowl, this could be a team, being familiar, having played them last year, that could knock them off the perch. Can Kyle Shanahan finally get his team over the hump with all of this offensive talent? Now, surprising to some, one of the catalysts to this team is Brandon Ayuk. Now, the uncertainty that is clouded around Ayuk and his contract status, he just tweeted out the money emojis talking about "F you, pay me," essentially, may want to leave this team. And if you take him out, I know they have Deebo Samuels, but he is constantly injured. And behind him, you have Juwan Jennings, who showed up in the playoffs last season, but he is not on Ayuk's level. And depending on what they do with Ayuk, this to me determines how far San Francisco will go. Now, coming in at number 2, this is the team that may be a surprise to some, being at how high they are. Some people are higher on them, some people may not be. But to me, at number 2, the team that I think that really can contend with Kansas City, because they can put up point for point with Patrick Mahomes, is the Houston Texans. Going into last season, there was a debate who should be the number 1 overall pick. Should it have been Bryce Young? Should it have been CJ Stroud? But I think CJ Stroud came out blazing. He had a rough start against the Ravens, but after then he took off, making Nico Collins a household name. Tank Dell went down early, who was in the beginning his favorite receiver. He should be back healthy this year. This to me was a team that was trending upward the entire season, and I think being in year 2 and D'Amico Ryans having a year under his belt to be a head coach with Bobby Slowick, I think that this offense is going to take that next step. Once again, this is prior to the draft, so we don't know what receiver that they may bring in, but in free agency, they traded for Joe Mixon, which I think helps this run game tremendously. I know they had Devin Singletary last season, and he did pretty well, but to me, Joe Mixon is on another level. And having Dameon Pierce back him up, their run game is set. But I think all of this is put on the shoulders of CJ Stroud, and he's shown time in and time out, no lead is safe. Then, most importantly to me, what they did defensively with Rookie of the Year Will Anderson, they brought in Danielle Hunter from the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I wanted Danielle on the Ravens 2 seasons ago. He had 16.5 sacks last year, and I think Danielle takes this defense to an even higher level. So if CJ Stroud can continue his ascension, I think defensively, they don't have to stop the Chiefs, but I think that they can slow them down. And with CJ Stroud in that offense, putting up those points, they could be a team that can knock Kansas City out of the playoffs. And of course, coming in at number 1, you know, it's got to be the Baltimore Ravens. In the beginning, I said Patrick Mahomes is one of the top 2 quarterbacks players in the league, and I think Lamar is right up there with him, albeit Lamar doesn't have the coaching and the talent around him offensively. I think that Lamar is progressing as a passer, and being that he was just in the first year of Todd Monken's system, another year under his belt only helps. Now, the Ravens defensively, I think, can hang with the Chiefs, holding them to 17 points in the AFC Championship game. Now, I know that the Ravens have lost their defensive coordinator and some defensive assistants. More importantly, they lost Patrick Queen, and they lost, which to me is equally important, cornerback Ronald Darby. I think he held down that CB3 spot quite well. Now, we just have to find his replacement. And offensively, the Ravens brought in Derrick Henry, which seemed to have been the knock during the AFC Championship game that the Ravens, we don't know why, decided once again not to run the ball. Bringing in a consistent 1,000-yard back like Derrick Henry changes this offense dramatically. Now, the only question that we have is, will the offensive line be put together to hold up, to block for Lamar, to block for Derrick Henry, and give them the holes and the time that they need? The Ravens have some players that they want to try out at the offensive line. We don't know how well that works out, but if they can become a collective, cohesive unit, the Ravens have the pieces offensively to play that game to kind of keep the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes off the field, and hopefully next time will be a different outcome. We shall see during the season, because the Ravens do play Kansas City. We just do not know what week yet. And to me, that game could be a preview of the AFC Championship game once again, if possibly the Chiefs don't meet the Houston Texans prior to that. So this is our list heading into the NFL draft. Depending upon what happens in the draft, what happens in the rest of free agency, that may change this list slightly. But as of right now, how it stands at this moment, these are the teams that I do and truly believe will give Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs a run for their money. History may not be on the side of Kansas City, but I'm not a fool. I do believe if there is a quarterback that can will his team to 3 straight titles, it's Patrick Mahomes. And I know people prey on the downfall of Travis Kelce, but until I see it personally, I'm not going to believe it. They were down on Kelce during the regular season, but come postseason, he was back to being Travie. He was back to being that dude and showed everybody why he is the #1 tight end. Then you bring in Hollywood Brown and give them that over the top, take the top off the defense wide receiver to go with Rashee Rice. Anything's possible. But to me, if the Chiefs do not win a title, it will be one of these 5 teams that does so. Appreciate you all hanging out with me. Let me know in the comment section who your teams are, who your top 5 teams are that you believe can take the Kansas City Chiefs out and stop them from winning a 3rd consecutive title. They have already built their dynasty, and they're trying to continue this legacy as Patrick Mahomes chases Tom Brady in the number of Super Bowls won. All right, don't forget to make sure that you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you are aware when I come out with new videos. And as always, until next time, it's your boy.